All right, all right, all right. Hey, everybody. Another Thursday, another Webflow SEO live stream here on Content Nest channel. And today we have a very interesting guest and we have a very interesting set of experiences chatting together, that being me and our guest. And today we will be talking about Devflow development, third-party extensions, limitations, and no limitations that Devflow might have, and a lot of other cool things. And I also imagine, knowing who our guest is, that we're also going to geek out on some both technical and non-technical SEO. And our guest today is Ailin Tobin. Now, let's start where it has to start. You're Irish, therefore I butchered your name like crazy.
So it's Ailín. It's the Irish version for Alan. So Ailín or Alan. Yeah, Ailín is good.
Ailin. Okay, I'll try to.
If you forget, just go with Alan.
Okay, because I would say it Ailin, but probably.
Yeah, the I is silent.
Okay.
The first first one. Yeah, the second I with the accent over it is like two E's.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
there's so much crazy Irish names. This is quite a simple one, I would say.
Yeah. No, it's an unusual one. I've only seen it. Apart from my name, I've seen it twice before. So
there's a story behind the name?
No, my mom and dad just actually, yeah, my dad liked a writer. I think his name was AJ Cronin. So my middle name is James. So my dad wanted me to be called AJ Tobin.
Okay. All right. So let's jump into a little intro of. All right. So for those who don't know, Ailin.
Let's go with Alan.
Let's go with Alan. Alan is a Webflow developer and designer as well, a little bit, or more of on which side?
No, I'm more of a dev. I would always say that I'm a dev. I do design, but from a dev's point of view, I much prefer working with awesome designers and trying to figure out their problems, or figure out what they see and try and develop that. So I would say I'm a dev.
Okay, so you're less creative, more analytical.
Whenever I've got a few designers that I work with, and I'm, constantly cursing them / inspired by their creativity and how they make me rethink structures and grids and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, because they don't think in terms of limitations; they just think of what's perfect for this screen size.
Oh yeah, okay. We're gonna touch more on that. So, anyways, follow Ailin on Twitter. All the links are in the description. You run Happy Devflow. This is an agency that does web development as a service, ongoing, non-ongoing, project basis, things like that. Am I correct on this?
Yeah. So I run a few things. So I've got my small agency, Tobin Web Design, which is like a full service branding and
which is this one, right?
Yeah. So that's what I started with. It's my longest running business. And this one I work with other solo business people, like freelancers in Ireland, and we work together on bigger projects. The Happy Devflow is kind of more retainer based stuff, where it's continuous work basically with clients.
Okay. So diversified even on that side. Okay, so not a lot of times you get to have a guest who has a few agencies.
Well, it's different fronts for me, put it that way. Happy Devflow is more specific to development. Tobin Web Design is more full service. Yeah.
Okay, cool to know. So if anybody wants to work with you, the links are in the description. If I missed one or two, for those watching later, I'm gonna fix it up and add it as soon as we finish. And then you have courses. You have Webflow development course. Tell us more a little bit about that.
So I don't have courses. I did add this 6 or 7 weeks of live classes to kind of, I just put it out there. And people signed up, and I was pretty taken aback. And we did 7 live classes touching on Webflow, HTML, and CSS, specifically looking at Client First by FinSuite, and it went really well. I was really happy with the overall progress of it. So there's quite a bit of content in those live classes that I'm going to start building out courses from that. So yeah, it was a really cool experience learning from, like, teaching people and learning what other people wanted to know. It was awesome. And then I've been recently doing some live classes with the Floxies community, just same kind of thing. So I'm trying, I suppose I'm trying to build up the confidence to do more teaching.
Okay, build up the confidence to do more teaching. That sounds like a hurdle that you're also facing, not only your students with Webflow development and client visitors and things like that, right?
I think everybody has a bit of imposter syndrome, and you know, this world of social media, we're all flexing and showing off how good we are at things, but underneath it all, we're still like, I'm still just Alan, who's a surfer from Ireland, and I have definitely, everyone's got insecurities. So like the idea of putting yourself in front of a live group of people or showing things that like you might think that it's not, you mightn't value what you know, and so it's been good to get positive feedback on what I've been showing people. It's awesome.
I can completely agree with you. It's really hard to have a very actually accurate, line of what other people's knowledge is, especially on certain in-depth topics. And you think that this is obvious for you, but fundamentally for a lot of people, this might not be. And that's where imposter syndrome comes from. You're learning from people who are way much better than you.
Yeah,
and you talk to somebody else, they're not necessarily even on %1 of that scale.
That's true. And it's always like, I suppose I'm always looking at other, I suppose, traditional devs, React devs, JavaScript devs, and then looking at designers, and I'm like, how do people do this? And I'm in my Webflow nerd space, and there's people that it seems like people are looking at me, and when you're looking in both directions, it's hard to see. Sometimes it's hard to see the wood from the trees, and I don't know. Yeah, this probably happens a lot with our work, with all of us, with the way we all work. And it's not just with expressing yourself, but maybe it's got to do with pricing. Maybe it's got to do with, oh, can I take this job on? Will I be able to do that? The confidence or imposter syndrome thing. I think it can be quite challenging, and a lot of it is like removing the flexing that we all do on social media from the reality of running a small business, interacting with people, dealing with clients, just being who you are. Yeah, it's a funny one.
Yeah, welcome. It's always hard. It's harder than everybody acts it is.
Yeah.
So that being said, you had something on the roadmap. Are you gonna still pursue these next courses that
you slowly. I do plan, and so the first one that I will do is I'm going to build out. I'm going to build out like the client first, how to develop with client first, and I'm working a lot with MemberStack at the moment, so that will be the next course. And instead of it being a course, it's going to be lots of tutorials, individual tutorials is what I'm thinking. So it's not going to be like a full, you're going to get 70 classes. It'll be like, this is a problem that I've solved. This is how you do it. And I plan to keep adding to it. And my dream is to build like a Netflix of Webflow, where very nominal subscription-based platform with loads of high-value educational content. But we'll see how it goes. So yeah, at the moment it'll be client first, and then it'll be MemberStack. Especially like MemberStack have just released 2.0, and it's like it's really powerful. I'm loving it.
Okay, I'm actually quite excited about this slow burning idea about like just having one kind of marketplace, so maybe even different people having inputs for very specific but very high efficiency solutions, and having a quick tutorials and that sounds like awesome idea, man, from you.
Okay, thanks.
So let's say hi to those who are here with us. So hi Cooper, nice that you're here. Hi Aruna, hi everybody. If you guys have any questions for us, especially for Ailin, just go nuts in the comment section. It helps everybody. It helps the algorithm. It helps us. It helps us to answer something that you're actually interested in. And the talks we having are always very casual, and if we want to go on a tangent, and especially if you guys have a good question, then we're always going to go on a tangent. Which brings us to just getting to know who Ailin is. So tell us about your life before Webflow. A quick summary of what we were doing and till the point where Webflow came into your life.
So I'm a qualified clinical immunologist. So that's what I did. I did clinical.
Is it normal that I don't know what that means, or at least?
So I studied medical science essentially, and my expertise was probably 12 years ago was immunology and biochemistry. So I used to work in pharmaceuticals and hospital laboratories, and I loved immunology and biochemistry and the structures of it, but I hated working in the environment. What I found was that when you studied science, like, it was just amazing. It was amazing what you were learning, but then the actual practice of working in the field was quite. It was limited. It wasn't as exciting as what I was learning, because you were working with tools that were doing all the science, and you were just either quality assuring or quality controlling or supporting systems that were performing all the scientific experiments. And I found it quite boring, really. So that was around 2012. Ireland was in deep recession, and I had a decent job. And there was this saying that was going around in Ireland at the time: "Isn't it great to have a job?" And it used to grate on me, because it meant, in my mind, it meant we were accepting a lower standard than what we should. And I just was, I don't know, I was pretty frustrated in Ireland. So I left to do what any 24-year-old would want to do, just wanted to travel. So I left Ireland with a surfboard and went to New York and met up with my best buddy, Connor. Spent a month with him, then went to California, traveled from California down to Nicaragua, which took about a year. Met a girl who is now my fiance, followed her to Turkey, France, back to Ireland, and then I became a surf instructor in Ireland and did that for a couple of years. And that's when I started to work in social media. So that was the first time I started working in the digital space. And what I noticed was that everybody needed a digital presence, small businesses as well as large, but no one really understood what these new, and like in 2014, Facebook and Instagram are relatively new. So I was building out social media presences for people in Facebook with Facebook and Instagram. Then all those people would ask me to work on their website, which was WordPress. And this was kind of pre-Elementor and all those Drag and Divi and all that stuff. So I was figuring out how to work on WordPress with PHP and HTML and CSS. Then I found Shopify, started working with Shopify, got myself a diploma in full stack development, and started working full stack, working with traditional HTML and CSS, and then I found Webflow, and I can't quite remember, but I think it was a mega menu. I don't know what it was. It was something to do with a menu and maybe like responsive menu. And I was trying to figure this out for a project, and I found Webflow, built it in Webflow, exported the code, added it to my project, and the person that I was answering to didn't know the difference. So I was like, this tool is awesome. And that's when I was like, okay. And I kept using Webflow to build out small snippets like of and export that and add it to a project. And that's when that was the first time I found out about the folder that had the Webflow hidden CSS, like the W container, W section, all these things. So I had to remove that and just use the CSS that I was building and add that in. And it was, it was, so that's when I kind of dropped Shopify, WordPress, and went all in on Webflow, because I was like, this writes HTML, CSS faster than I can and produces better results. And it was a bit of a light bulb moment. That was around 2017, 2018.
Wow, that's an interesting use case that you found. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but at the same time, you don't hear that quite a lot, of using Webflow as a faster coding tool than exporting bits and pieces and then attaching to your headless or non-headless, whatever type of CSS that you're working on. That's kind of speeding up your process, but also getting better quality components. I don't know. So it's like now components, you just kind of export and put it elsewhere. This is not a common touch point that you hear.
Less common now, but I believe the original Webflow, everything was static. They didn't have a CMS, so you were building out static pages. And I think that happened a lot more back in the day, like pre-interactions 2.0 and pre the CMS, like Webflow. People were exporting HTML and CSS and then adding it to headless CMSs. So it may not be common practice now, but it definitely was more of a thing back in the day. And definitely the first website that I built on Webflow for a client, I exported it and I had like maybe 5 static pages and uploaded it to a server, and it was just running as as just HTML and CSS without a CMS and without a database. It was just all sitting there. And I can probably see this potentially happening again with the new features like with DevLink and that this might become might happen again. But I don't know. I wouldn't rule it out again.
I can see where you're going. That full loop when the tools become even more powerful as they are now of development, but you also, if you're building something very, very, very custom, maybe it's even better to just export the whole thing and do the old school way like you did in the past for certain types of builds. And I know people do that today if they really need it. There's a use case for that. So interesting perspective. I'm gonna put it that way. Really interesting and unique perspective of started as a developer exporting code, not a designer. That doesn't need a developer, but started as a developer, and then you can see potential lead that happening again. Ireland. So you say you're the first Devflow developer from Ireland? I found that somewhere.
No, I'm the first Webflow expert, official expert.
Oh, so you're the first who got the badge.
Was the first who got the badge, yeah. Okay. And the way I know that is it was like super earlier on, and I was constantly contacting the partnership team, and I was like, oh, you need to do something. Well, maybe I messaged them 10 times, and then they put me on a beta waiting list, did the exams, and they sent me an invite link and to create my first profile, and Ireland didn't exist in the options. So I think it was Eaton that I reached out to, and he added Ireland as an option right there in front of me. And so I was like, does this mean I'm the first in Ireland? He's like, yep. I'm like, okay, cool.
So that's proof.
Yeah, it was. Maybe I snuck in front of someone, but I definitely wasn't the first person in Ireland using Webflow. There was other people out there using the tool at the time.
All right. So, and when you went all in into Webflow and went all in to, basically I imagine this being, you are the one pitching Webflow to your clients. Webflow doesn't need to pitch to anybody. You are doing their bidding, right? So what kind of projects, how did all that life looked after you started exclusively focusing only on Webflow? And I imagine because you have developer background and you can even write, you can in theory code the same component by hand, just you don't want to do it because it would be very slow. What kind of projects are we talking about? What kind of fun stuff in general? Like, how did that whole life looked for you?
So initially it was lots of small local businesses and who needed marketing sites. So yeah, I was just building out marketing websites for yoga instructors, shops, professional, like doctors, physios, all in my local area, and trying to be more of a designer than a developer at the time. So I was trying to be that all-in-one package where you could be a designer and a developer, because I suppose what Webflow was selling me at the time was the design aspect, but I wasn't a designer. So
we call those dev designers.
Yeah,
we even had a stream a few weeks back where we were talking about that if you are a generalist in Devflow, there's design, there's development, and you're somewhere in between. You're never 100% on one side. You can do both. Therefore, you're a dev designer.
Designer, yeah. I suppose we all are that in a way. And so this was the start of Tobin Web Design. So I did everything except the photography and animations and stuff. But it was mainly like I would hire my
copy as well.
Yeah, like the copy would be like, okay, I'll give you a rundown. So I would design and build these websites, and I would hire a photographer from Ireland called Mike O'Leary, and he goes by Green Graph Photography, and he would do all my product photography, photography for my, if it was a different, whatever the client wanted. And I was selling packages that would include photography, and I'd always hire him because he would make, he was awesome. So he always made my sites look better. And we started to figure out what was better in terms of, basic UX and how to push, how to get the subject in certain positions and get loads of white space so that I could put text on and these kind of things. And we worked really well together. But the packages that I was selling weren't of the amount that I could hire a copywriter. And usually what was happening is the clients were like, oh no, I'll do the copy. So I would get them to write out bios about themselves and their businesses, and from that I would create some basic, unsophisticated copy that a developer would write. But it worked, and maybe do a bit of like SEO research then, and try and get but nothing too in depth. So that's kind of how that started, and from that my projects kind of grew, and then I was able to pull in copywriters, project managers, designers, UX designers. So it grew fairly in a space of 2 years, I suppose, maybe 2.5 years. It went from small local businesses to larger businesses with bigger teams, essentially.
Okay, so that's cool. That sounds like a very amazing success story. Would you change anything in how you approached back then your design development agencies, marketing strategy? Therefore, as you say, like you started from small local and grew, which is not a bad thing because you get to iterate on a few things before you go to more complex issues. So would you change anything, or do you think that was awesome and it's the best thing you could have hoped?
So I was really lucky. So I work in a shared office space in Ireland, and it is 7 kilometers, 8 kilometers from my house. And my office is 2 doors down from a graphic designer, UX designer who has 20 years experience. So I was super lucky to piggyback on his experience, and he guided me a lot at the start. And then I started working directly with him, and he started work. So I started hiring him, and he started hiring me. So in that sense, I was very lucky to have him there to notice mistakes that I was making, notice things that I was doing well, and call me out and give me encouragement. And we still work together now on large projects. And this was my first the first time I noticed that I'm not a designer, I'm a developer, and what he can do and what he can think of and the way he puts things together and the reasons he designs things compared to what I did. But then he couldn't put that onto a website, even if he tried Webflow and he lost his mind. He was like, I hate this.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Because I think if I seen experiences where I also felt the same way with certain types of people, designers or UX designers that can think in that way, and if you find a way to collaborate where you make sacrifices and they make sacrifices, we come up with insanely great design, very SEO optimized, very well ranking and high growing in traffic websites, for example. But I also saw one of them picking up Devflow and grinding through the teeth to pick it up, because CSS gets you immediately when you start doing it. You realize why everything changed here now. I just changed one thing. What? But when you bypass all these kind of things that in the beginning you have to understand, I saw really amazing things flourish out of that. I'm interested why somebody could not pick it up, or just in general.
It's not that he couldn't. He definitely has the capability. It's that he tried it, built a website, and couldn't, at the time, make it look like the design that he made in XD. And he has got the experience to know that it is faster and cheaper for him to hire a dev. So he definitely has the capability. He is incredibly intelligent, incredibly smart. He's just so smart that he's like, why would I do this myself when I can? And I suppose this is like what he expects. So his name is Ailin Davis, by the way. He runs Ultra Design in Ireland. And his expectation is for people to hire his expertise. So then he should hire other people's expertise. And that's kind of a mindset that I have as well. Learned from him.
Honestly, very cool idea. Love it. Like this kind of sounds like very responsible thing to do for your clients as a service provider.
Yeah, well, if you wing something, like there is people out there who are awesome at everything, and they're super. They just love learning. They love trying out new things, and like, go for it. If you want to go for it, go for it. But my thought process is like you were saying about collaboration. When I get designers on board, they challenge me. If I design something, I'll design something so that I can build it really quickly. Whereas a designer doesn't care about how quickly I build it, or what
or how slow the site will be if we do this.
Right. And that's my job, to make sure that the designer's imagination and what they've put down on XD or Figma comes to life, performs, and works. And also my job is to make sure that if a marketing person comes in, that they can make the site, it can be more marketable, I suppose. They can drive traffic to it and make that work. So like, it's the way I think about it is the product ends up better. Like 2 minds is way better than 1, and the sum of the 2 minds is more than two people. Like, there's the amount of times that I've hit a problem and you ask or you collaborate and this problem gets solved super quickly. It's about, yeah, when you work, I find when I work with more people, the end result is better.
Love your attitude towards work-life balance, friends, communications, making, networking and things like that. Really love yeah, really love it. Honestly, speechless. No, but legitimately, I really believe that Webflow community can benefit from more thinking like that. As we flourish as a tool users, it becomes more and more important that we understand our professional limitations and advise clients to do the right thing. And the right thing many times can mean, if you want it done good, that part of the project, you have to get, and then there's an array of professionals that even if you could do it, but that's not something you specialize in. And this takes, I think, both courage and responsibility to do it this way, as opposed of always trying to be that one-man army, just because it's easier to work with yourself than with others.
It can be, but if I was to give one bit of advice on how to increase the price of what you're selling, is get more people on board. So if you want to, I'm not going to start telling people how to make, this bullshit 10K a month kind of thing. But if you want to sell products of a higher value, when you pitch that to your client, if you have 5 or 6 people on that team, your client is already going to calculate that this is now how much per person. So, and it's a team, it's not just one person. So they will, in my experience, they see better value in that. So I think not only for the benefit of the project, but for the benefit of your business, that if you have more skill sets involved, you can, well, first of all, when you start pricing, if you've got 5 people involved, I'm just going to throw out a number. If you have 5 people involved and you've got a project that's 20K, that means everybody has to get at least 4K. So, or if you want to keep 20% profit, 4K has to go in profit, and then you're splitting 16 between 5 people, which goes down to about 3.5K. So like, if you are trying to, when you start hiring people.
Oh, I think we have a bad connection. I think we glitched out for a moment there, but we're back. So repeat the last sentence. I think.
Okay, so I'll just go back to saying, if you're trying to increase, okay, I'm not selling people the bullshit of 10K a month. I'm not selling that. I'm just trying to say that if you're increasing your prices, the best way that I've found to do it is get more people involved, because they're going to give the price that they want to make. So like an UX designer might want to make $3,000, a copywriter might want to make $3,000, an SEO expert might want to make $3,000. We're already at $9,000, and then you're going to have to do your development. And let's say you want to make $3,000 and you want to make 20% profit. Like, we're already up at $15,000 here, but everybody's making okay money there, like good money. So, and I'm just throwing out random numbers there, but if you're trying to do everything yourself, you're going to be working more hours for less amount per hour. And if you focus on your expertise, you'll become better at what you're doing. You'll work less hours on what you're doing, and your hourly rate will go up. That was my experience anyway. And then you've got all these awesome people working on a project with you, and your project is way better.
Yeah, and also each part, when you do it that way, each part, 1 is 1, 2 is 3, but then 5 maybe could be 37, just by the expansion rate that you can accumulate, because websites are complicated and there's a lot of things to think. And in my experience, most people have a tendency that build websites, doesn't matter what kind of job they're doing, to over focus on one part, but maybe not to have that many expectations from some other areas. So I can imagine this also being extremely profitable for a client. That's a good tip. That's amazing advice. and that's really responsible. So let's jump into the topic then. Let's touch a little bit on, this was really a cool story, and it kind of still completely fits with our topic today, which is like Webflow DevTool, third-party integrations, and general limitations, because this kind of opens an avenue, I think, for a lot of people that way. So let me jump into the file that we had. So you started using Webflow as a development tool, and that was your first experience, and also that was quite early in Webflow's product cycle, right? And today you develop in Webflow, but also deploy in Webflow, right? Do you say that Webflow, you can build anything with Webflow, or just some stuff can be built with Webflow? How would you approach that whole, what can be developed, what cannot be developed with Webflow, the way you see it as an experienced developer that worked in the back old days of WordPress was new and things like that?
So you can't build anything with Webflow on its own. You can probably build 95% of most ideas with Webflow and other tools. And it's really, really exciting. So Webflow have moved into DevLink, which is allowing React capabilities, allowing React capabilities and Webflow work together. Then there's Wiz, which is so powerful that it's almost as powerful as React. I'd say you could do pretty much everything with Wiz is that you can do with React, but it's like a visual way of developing and writing backend code. And then there's member stack, which uses more like attributes and its own kind of JavaScript jQuery kind of library and snippets, and it allows you to do an awful lot. And Member Stack have just released 2.0, and they've got member scripts. The member scripts is a part of their 2.0 launch, and it's like they're really pushing out the boat on what I thought we couldn't do with Webflow and Member Stack, but they're trying to solve a lot of use cases at the moment. So definitely.
And what did change for those who maybe tried Member Stack in the past but haven't tried for a while, or for those who don't know what the capabilities of 2.0 are? Like, can you give us a short pitch of Member Stack 2.0? What can be done and what was not there in the first version but is there, and what's the power beneath it?
Yeah, so in the first version, it was more like just gated content with a payment platform. Like, I'm being very simplistic here. Sign in here, now you see new stuff that you couldn't see before you signed in. And there was there was more to it, but that was as basic as it got. Whereas now it's like it still has that membership gateway, but it's the inbuilt attributes allow you a lot more in terms of communicating with a database, or communicating requesting information off people and storing that. So then you're able to build up more of a profile and deploy that profile and store data on people, and then give them an experience that replicates a web app, as opposed to a website that has gated content. That's probably the easiest way to think of it. Before, it was website with gated content, whereas now it's a web app with a sign-in function. And the 2 point, like before, it was all custom fields that allowed you to put simple data into those custom fields, and then you could show that simple data. You're now able to make multiple updates to that data. It also has metadata fields and JSON fields. And recently, they've updated it so that you're able to manipulate the JSON, which is specific to a member, from the front end. So this allows you to make like to-do lists and allows people to add, you could even start making have a basic conversation between people if you really go down the route. But seeing what they're doing and how they're targeting what the capabilities of MemberStack are using JavaScript and jQuery, it opens a lot of fields. So
would you say you could build a simple, some sort of Trello alternative by just using only Devflow and only MemberStack?
You could, yeah. You could build a Trello alternative that would have a feature that allows you add in through using like a basic form that sends, project date, whether it's done or not, send that to the JSON. Then it would populate in a field here, click a button to send it to from not started to in progress, send it to complete, and then delete it. You can do that at the moment. Yeah, it wouldn't have the drag and drop capabilities of Trello yet, but that's just JavaScript. It's not too complicated, or it is complicated, but it's not impossible, I suppose is what you should say. And yeah, at the moment it's kind of like a unidirect. The way they've set it up, it's one directional, but it won't be long before you'll be able to move things from like completed back to in progress. Or so yeah, it's a very yes is the answer.
So now, because you also touched on this and you work quite a lot with that, when MemberStack is not enough and you have to bypass to things like Wiz and using, Sano or things like that, like any custom databases, or where's that gap of functionality is not enough? Now we have to start creating very custom functionality and custom things. How would you kind of explain for somebody who doesn't know that side of Webflow development with third-party solutions?
So up until 2.0, I would have said to build a to-do list, you need to use Wiz. Okay, so since we're talking about a to-do list, but now that MemberStack is pushing in this direction, like every week there's a new update that they're adding. Now they're behind Wiz in terms of that really customized functionality, but they're catching up. They're moving forward at a very rapid pace. So I'll tell you the difference between Wiz and MemberStack. Wiz, if you can imagine it, right now it's very likely you can do it. Whereas with MemberStack, they're giving you the snippets of code and the tools to solve problems that they've been asked to solve. So it's a bit different. It's not Wiz. You're coding, you're visually coding out the problems, whereas MemberStack is you're using the snippets of code that solve a problem to solve an already solved problem.
All right. So the summary, very like this explanation. So if you can imagine, you can build it with Wiz, and MemberStack is just a list of very, very well addressed problem solutions to very specific problems. Okay, that's actually never heard of this anywhere. could be that it's first time said anywhere online, and now we have it.
Someone doesn't slate me for.
I mean, if we would get people from MemberStack and we would get people from Wiz, it probably would become way much more complex than that. But in theory, it's good to know for Webflow community and in general for anybody running a Webflow website, fundamentally, roughly how this side, I think, feels. All right. So talking about other platforms, what other powerful solutions are there that you get to use in your job, in your work, and your projects in general outside of MemberStack and Waste?
Well, like with all of, so what I'm working with at the moment is Webflow, MemberStack, Airtable, and Zapier. So that's one big project I'm working with at the moment. So I haven't been working too much with Wiz in the last 2 months. Just kind of like dipping in and out of it. I've tested the dev link with React just kind of for fun. Looks super powerful and there's a lot of potential with that.
Quick technical difficulty.
For
yeah, I think we glitched out. I think we're back. Can you hear me now? All good?
I could hear you the whole time. Yeah. So we're in.
Okay. So we had a tiny, again, sorry for the technical difficulty. So I heard, because it was only fractions of words, I heard something Airtable. So you might.
Okay. So what I'm working with currently is the project I'm working on is Webflow, MemberStack, Zapier, Airtable, and then jQuery, writing custom snippets. So that's what I'm working with at the moment, just because of the project that I'm working in, and they're solving pretty much every problem that the CEO of the company has asked for. So far so good. Yeah, it's the most powerful feature that a recent update has been Webflow's attributes that I have found is Webflow's attributes and the ability to dynamically update an attribute through the CMS. That is like.
Can you give us a use case, what that changes, what was not possible without this feature and is possible today from a developer's perspective that also writes custom code?
Yeah, I'll give you two. So what I've done with this one project is we're building checklists for different events, different things. And the checklists there's 700 at the moment. There's 740 items, so individual checklists, and they're all connected to a subtitle and a title through Webflow's CMS, and then they're connected to a database. So a dashboard. So if you think of it cascading down, there's the dashboard with a title, a subtitle, and then loads of checklists. So those checklists are connected. So a checklist needs to be in a form. That form is connected to MemberStack's database, so it's individualized to the member. So there is how that has to happen is that the checklist has to communicate with MemberStack. It has to find a column, and inside that column it has to put data. Now, what I did here was, because we're using Webflow CMS, each of the checklists has its own individual slug, because when in Webflow you type in item 1, the slug will be item 1, item 2, the slug will be item 2. So I've pulled, using Webflow's attributes, I've added the MemberStack attribute, which is like data MS member, I think it is, or MS content, something like that. And then I've added the slug as the unique piece of code that gets sent to MemberStack, which means that when on click, that piece of data gets sent to MemberStack, stays in the member's profile, and then the checklist stays clicked, and then that can be updated. We can use that data in different parts of the app. So that's really cool. That means before, what you would have had to do is maybe custom make that feature, and you build out the feature in Webflow, add it to like an embed, and then create an attribute and connect that attribute using the Webflow embed feature. But now it's there in the designer, and it's working really well. It means for scaling, it's just add more checklists. As long as they're categorized right, they're going to go individually to each person. So that was awesome. I was so pumped when that feature came out, and I was able to. So I actually built it out with embeds, and I had to rebuild it so that it would work just as a component. And then the other one that I've done twice now is having multiple redirects of a form based off of selection options, so that instead of always going to a thank you page, it goes to option 1's thank you page or option 10's thank you page, and using attributes and just a field and a text field, I'm able to redirect things to different places. And the coolest thing I did with that is I'm working with this cycling coach, and we've built out this form which acts like an onboarding form that has 160 outcomes, and then that redirects to 16 specified products. So it's like it cascades really, really deep, and then it becomes really specific, which is really cool.
So is that for understanding? Because if it has so many variations and then pulls into 16, are these mandatory to suggest the best thing, or is it also something to understand better the visitor?
So if you think of it this way, we counted out that there's 160 different people that will use his product, but there's only 16 products, and but the different people should have like an individualized product. So the questionnaire, and I was actually using Formly. Formly is a pretty awesome tool as well. I was using Formly for this, and yeah, it's like, are you A or B? And then it's like, if you go with B, are you C, D, and E? And it just kept cascading out. And the last two questions, I connected them to the Webflow CMS so we could auto-populate the 160 thank you pages. And then those thank you pages are connected to individual products. So it's like, thank you, Ailin, you're this type of cyclist. This is the problem that this type of cyclist has. And just over here on the side is like, here's a potential solution for your problem. And instead of being 160 solutions, there's 16. So that was really cool.
And you use field input data. So every time somebody fills in the form, there's a new CMS item created for that, or it's more of just coding on top of
it was more building out the structure. So
okay.
the user will go through this journey.
That's
and
awesome.
for them to get like a very specific outcome, or the outcome that the owner of the business wanted, and then to target them with just one niche item. Yeah, it was a really, we're still working on the job. It was really cool when we figured that out.
That's awesome. I would honestly, I'm listening to this and I'm extremely excited. Also immediately think about like 2 projects that I'm working on that could kind of theoretically use this, especially in the long run of the cycle. But yeah, this is so cool that you get to not only get a chance to build stuff like that on Webflow, but also deliver on such amazing systems. This is super awesome to see.
Yeah, it is. And
have you tried Devflow? Yeah, continue.
So, what I think at the moment, the limitation that Webflow has is not having a database that is as robust as Airtable. That's my personal opinion. Because a lot of this type of stuff I'm using, Airtable, or we're using Excel spreadsheets to write out the data and then upload it. If Webflow cracked the code of databases, I reckon it's like, for me anyway, for what I'm trying to do, it would be a game changer. It would just, I wouldn't, that in terms of technical limitations of moving data from one place to the other, or visually solving a problem, or doing the front end of the problem, like there's workarounds for those front ends. But at the moment, the database problem is connecting that database to a third-party database using something like no-code no bull app with Airtable, or having individual buttons that are publishing from Airtable to Webflow. So if they could fix that problem, it's like I can't. I could see a lot more problems being solved.
So basically, you're saying that what WhaleSync does fundamentally,
Yeah.
you want Webflow to solve that natively, or more you're saying that Webflow should kind of really robust their CMS in general to be way much more, not only a content management system, but also a database and behave like both at the same time, which is kind of more where you would like this to go.
Yeah, I think so. I think it would, if it would, maybe it's a native plugin, or a collaboration with some company like WhaleSync, but I reckon if you can have it internally, that the database is internal and it's on AWS and secured by Webflow's SSL certs and security, and then you're removing that potential risk of moving data from one party via another to another. I reckon that would be a huge step. But
so what kind of, in terms of CMS capabilities and basically, other words saying database limitations, let's call them native database limitations on Devflow, right? What you would be most excited to see happening in the nearest future, and maybe even announced in WebflowCon this year?
It's honestly very simple stuff. Right now, if it was really simple, like being able to edit without having to go into the individual item, being able to bulk edit multiple things at the one time. I'll give a use case example. I've said, if you have like 500 items and you've solved another problem later on, and it means that you need to connect a category field, and you're going to use multi-reference fields. And if you have 500 items that you want to bulk update, and maybe there's only 10 categories, you want to add them, well, you have to either do that individually, or you need to use Airtable, or you need to download the CSV and add that manually and upload, which work. But if they could,
welcome to my daily life. Welcome to my job.
So I'm not looking for like this initial stage. I'm not thinking, have a JSON field or having metadata fields or being able to add custom scripts so that they can trigger based off of, different outcomes. I'm just saying bulk upload, bulk update, bulk edit.
Work like with a spreadsheet.
Work more
not at once with multiple items. Yeah, that's the biggest thing that we're missing, because this would actually solve a big chunk of speed. I can completely agree with that part. Have you ever imagined that Webflow CMS could potentially self-reference fields inside? For example, text field in the CMS, just like you can do in CMS collection template in custom code section, like for example in the head, assign fields from the CMS. Same would happen natively within the CMS fields when you work with data. Ever had a use case where that would solve a lot of issues? Or
so are you kind of thinking, if someone is running like ads or A/B testing pages, and you wanted to, instead of being like Webflow developer, it says Webflow designer, and that auto updates? Is that what you're thinking? Or is it more that if you're writing out a script and you have these fields that you want to add it to multiple static pages at the one time?
It's more of a lot of, because Webflow CMS have one property from my experience, which is amazing for SEO, but that usually means more and more and more fields, and a lot of builds, even SaaS builds, are not possible to build with 30 field limitation, but 60 is enough usually. But what that means, you input variations of the same data. So for example, you say, I don't know, you're building a SaaS for a new form of code editor, right, where people sit on their computers and code. And then you would add somewhere, you would add the word code, then you would add code editor, then you would add maybe HTML code editor, then things like that, because that's going to be populated on this page. For example, on homepage, we want to link to all different code types that we can this code editor works. So it's maybe Python, HTML, whatever, right? But that's going to be a collection list. And I don't want it to say every time HTML code editor. I just needed to say HTML because it's going to be like a checklist below something. So now I open, as you just said, 8 items, and I run through each other and just dissect from HTML code editor, from Python code editor. Just I write HTML, Python, things like that. This is a very simple use case, and you would think, okay, so yeah, but 7 minutes later, you're done. Yes, but we do that even more and more and more times, and that as that progresses, I would build, if that feature shows up, that you can self-reference data from the fields itself, I would start CMSs that I build. I mean, CMS structure, a field structure, and how it's built for SEO are very complex. But if that would show up, I would definitely start from the ground up, rethinking the best practices to do it, because then you could really save a lot of time by being, just smart about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, there you go. That's why you're an SEO nerd, and that's why you need to talk to the database team and be like, hey.
Honestly, they picked up all of your suggestion, my suggestion, something else we had. The team on Twitter are picking up these ideas.
No, they're really good. Yeah.
I really hope there's no insanely big technical limitations that they cannot deliver even on the basic stuff.
Yeah, technically there shouldn't be, but yeah, it's going to be really interesting. And this kind of goes back to the way we were talking earlier on, is that this tool that we're working on is going to be like, we're going to have so many niche experts underneath the umbrella of Webflow. Like, the way at the moment you've got Airtable experts. So if Webflow build out a really robust database, we're going to have Webflow database experts. We're going to have, and then we're going to have, I don't know, the limitations. I don't see limitations if these things start rolling. And with the way how creative people are and what we're trying to imagine and the problems we're trying to solve, like underneath this umbrella, we're just going to have so many like nerds putting their minds together and figuring out solutions for Webflow that are design, development, technical, back end, front end. Like I think it could be really cool.
I never actually thought about it. Then I really immediately can know where I should put myself in position, and other people like you or others that I know that I work with. It's really interestingly throughout the span of the hour, it's been in this kind of very nice loop of going from your experience, then your attitude towards collaboration, and what kind of difference it makes both for the client and you as a professional. Also, you get to geek out on just one thing which you love, as opposed to doing everything that you maybe don't like that much. And then the technical side of possibilities of Devflow, and then we kind of loop back into that. If every time Devflow adds a new feature, there's even more possibilities to niche down on something very specific. Like, for example, you say they added that attributes can now be assigned. Therefore, sooner or later, there'll be professionals only in that, how to, connect things and do fancy, fun stuff just by manipulating data through attributes.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so cool. Like,
yeah, continue.
One.
Sorry?
You were going to ask a question. I was just going to.
No, I was. Yeah. Okay. Then I'm going to ask the question that I want to ask. Are you going to be in Devflow Conf this year?
Yeah, I'm going to the one in London. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I'll be at that. Yeah, I can't wait. Actually, I was at the Flail meetup in London there a couple of months ago. Jack is such a legend. Like, fair play to him for organizing it. And it was just so cool, like, to meet all these people that we just know their avatars, you know, like, and just figure out who these people are. Like, it's, yeah, I don't know, we're living in this like world of laptops and, you know, little faces like this, and, you know,
Spreadsheet cells.
yeah, and even like there's a lot of people that I would know through Webflow that it's literally just as a digital persona and through chats like this as opposed to in person. So yeah, it was really exciting just to go and meet people and see what they're doing and bounce ideas off, and yeah, see what people are at.
So you already have confirmed the ticket, everything is okay? Or
Yeah, I got a confirmation there last week, so I'm pretty stoked.
all right. So I will be there as well.
Nice.
Unless something really weird happens, but 99% that I'm going to be also there. So really excited for that. I think we're going to wrap up our hour. It's a little bit longer than an hour. We touched on quite a few topics. Would love to have you again and really come now with less introduction, more geeky out, because it's really, I can spot how your mind works and how you work with Devflow, and that me understanding that better would teach me so much stuff. And I hope it could be said vice versa, because Devflow community, in my sense, the way I experience it most, built so many generalists that are super amazing, but certain types of projects requires such a deep focus in very small areas. We just said that I'm happy to see that these people start popping up, that it's not just everything, but it's more, I only work with that part, and it's super awesome to always meet them. So just like you, Ailn.
Yeah, no, I think maybe that's just the way, like, the evolution of a company and the evolution of a tool, like, that it has to start off somewhere and it has to become the best at something. And it did, like, it became the best at converting design ideas into HTML and CSS. It is the best tool in the world for that, if you're a visual person. So I think they've nailed that, and like, to move from that to pivot, or not even move, is just to diversify and get more of the skill sets that are out there under the umbrella of Webflow, I think would be a really positive move. And like, stuff that you're doing, you know, that all should already exist in Webflow. It should already be a part of what people are, what customers need and what clients need. And yeah, there's already space for experts, I think. And I think there's going to be more space for more specific experts. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I imagine. Well, for me, sadly, SEO still is usually an afterthought when it actually should be first thing.
I think, yeah, writing and SEO is always the last thing on clients' minds. So, yeah.
That's why I launched this stream, one. And two, that's why I launched my agency, because I knew that it's not going to happen like, design agency or design and development agency or branding agency gets a new lead, and then they say, have you guys went to an SEO for them to prepare a sitemap based on search intents that you guys solve for, and therefore you can rank? No? So you go that way, and then you come back to us, and then we're going to build it. This would be perfect scenario for the client, but I'm not envisioning that will ever be the way it's going to work. So I'm really stoked about that whole idea that more and more Webflow people start communicating with each other and working on projects together. And we've seen a lot of these connections already forming, especially when we are both always on Twitter.
Do you know what? Like, it's not just... so this is going back to what I was saying, like, if you're presenting a lot of experts to a client, then the value in the eyes of the client, well, the value for the client is greater. Also in their own eyes, seeing more people working on a project, it feels greater. And this is, another thing that maybe a lot of people in the space don't even realize, like that you should have a sitemap architect straight off the bat, building out working in collaboration with the content writer, with the UX designer, with the, before you know it, you could have 10 people working on a project. And that's great. It's the way it should be, in my opinion.
Completely agree. And again, I come from a background where a successful site always has at least 3, 4, 6, 7, 10, 12 people working on it to recoup everybody's salary and a profit that is tangible. And if 2 people leave that room, it's gonna go down. The benefit is that because it's an investment, it would slowly balloon down. It would not be that day, but that's why I was really interested into becoming part of the Webflow community, of that whole idea that, hey, we have this extreme power at our hands. Never, ever in the past we had so much, and the power comes with speed, I would think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because you develop faster, you design faster, you publish content faster, you do everything faster. And now AI even starting to show up on the horizon, and we just move 10 times faster than I remember moving like 6 years ago or things like that. But as opposed to that, if just one, that's why it's possible to be alone and still deliver on a lot of fields. All right, Ailin, any last thoughts before we wrap it up? Any last advice? Any last hopes for the Webflow Conf or for the future releases? Anything that's on your mind? And we're gonna start wrapping this up.
Last thoughts are just, I don't know, just have fun when you're designing, developing, writing content. Like, the reason I love this tool is because it allows me to have a really nice existence on the west coast of Ireland, and just enjoy what you're doing, because I think we're in this really lucky space to just be working under a really amazing tool, and to be, I just feel very fortunate to have like this opportunity to work in Canada at the moment and to live in the west of Ireland and not have to live in a city, basically. So yeah, just enjoy it.
Just enjoy it. You heard Ailin. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap up for this week. See you guys all next week. Thanks, Ailin, for coming. This was super awesome. I love this conversation, and we're definitely, if you're okay with that, we're gonna do it again next time. We're gonna pick a topic. We're gonna prepare a little bit more of some sort of a problem-solving quiz, because you said you want to work on a platform where maybe some harder puzzles are. Solutions to harder puzzles are put together. So we might do some sort of weird beta test.
Maybe that's not a bad idea, because I'm usually getting designers throwing problems at me, not like SEO nerds. So yeah.
All right, guys, thanks, Ailin. Thanks everybody for being here. Thanks everybody who's watching this later. And we're gonna end here and see you guys next week.